Hi folks. I have a lot of unfinished projects on my workbench, in storage. You know, that kind of happens in this hobby. But I was looking at this the other day. Sorry, I just walked up 3 flights of stairs. Yeah, my body's not wired properly. We know this. So I'm doing good. But yeah, there's this, not from the original trilogy, but there's a blaster from the Mandalorian that caught my interest because a lot of it is from an original part, generally speaking. On newer shows, they tend to 3D model their own things from an original part sometimes, but they adjust it to their artistic liking and then print or CNC their own brand new version. Cool for production. It's probably the best way to get something that'll show up in 4K, you know, to their exact liking. I don't know. I personally don't work in productions, so I don't work in the industry, so my opinion is not incredibly valid, but from the outside, I almost feel like the accidents, the limitations of making something or finding, you know, using the inspiration of real world parts more directly, I feel like those limitations lead to better accidents and more interesting stuff. I don't know if that's still relevant today, but I don't know. It just sometimes sometimes the fuck ups really matter. Although that is mostly hindsight. There's this blaster from the Mandalorian that uses a real world part. This is a printout from the new visual dictionary that came out. It's kind of cool. And I have one here. It's a Sedgley signal flare pistol. It's a flare gun from the US Navy. This is dated 1944. I bet they were produced from World War II up until the 50s or 60s. I don't know for sure, but I don't think it was like, you know, this seems like a generic stamp for RF Sedgley Incorporated 1944. So it might be a little while after that. But yeah, that's what they used as inspiration for this blaster. And I think it was used in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett as like a sidearm. There's details on it. There's either 2 barrels or a barrel and a scope, however you look at it. You can interpret it to the best of your liking. But surprisingly, all of this and this, and this is all the original thing, which was a shock to me, that this whole section wasn't, I thought it was just this that they grabbed, but this whole thing, and I think they chopped it right about there, something along those lines. But that's where this video is going to start, because I wanted to take you, whether you're on the RPF and you've seen this a million times and done it yourself, or whether you're on YouTube and seeing a little window into part of prop replica making. I wanted to walk you through just one little part of these projects. Especially because if you're trying to make something, if you're trying to machine something or make a replica of it, first of all, the prop and the real thing are not the same size. They adjusted the 3D model to their liking and then reprinted a new one that was a little different. So you can't just directly measure one thing and then make your thing with that measurement. I just printed this out generally to 8.5 by 11, which doesn't directly match in size. So again, we're not going to be taking just caliper measurements and matching them. This is generally how I've been doing things with great success. So let's explore this blaster first of all, at its basic elements. Let me turn this down and tighten the hell out of the phone here. There we go. Make Sure. Okay. Let's take this apart. Don't cam out. Don't cam out. Boy, that's in there pretty tough. Well, something must be dislodged here. I'll take a metal file to that to resharpen that. This is a weird screw. Very weird screw here. You know what? I'll put this. Gotta have a place to put your things. Have a stamp tray. We'll use that. Now this, here's the release trigger. It does come out. This. Now this, I did take this apart and blew the parts that were scratched, that were kind of worn away. So this is all with perma blue redone, and there's barricade oil and everything. I disassembled the whole thing, cleaned it, did chemical bluing, and oiled it. There's a serial number there, and the logo's right there, which is pretty cool, I think. We don't need this right now. I know we're going to cut this eventually. That's not what we're doing today. I want to deal with the trigger. So, okay. Now on mine, my original one, this was stuck shut. I mean, this was probably not taken apart since the factory. So I had to use, I'm a piano technician, so I went to my piano tuning kit. This goes from a hammer drill to a piano tuning pin socket. And this is a machine thing for a piano tuning socket to a slotted screw, because sometimes the cast iron plates in pianos need to be tightened up, and they're huge. So I had this in a hammer drill, and then this. This is what I ended up using, because that's at least a decent size for the socket. It was ridiculous. But I think it's still loose. So I can, yeah. I did this so I could take it apart later. It's quite thick. There's a spring. Look at that. And that just slides out. Remember, I cleaned and blued and oiled this again, so there is barricade. I have to wash my hands. Another spring. I remember how this went together. If you don't and you take this apart, make sure you document it. But, see that? That's cool. There we go. I'm going to leave that pin in there. There's a pin right in here. It's oiled. I'm going to leave it in there. We don't need this right now. This is great. I don't think they adjusted this at all. Well, obviously they adjusted everything, but just in general for my project. Right? Heavy duty machined end. And this is the handle. I already ground off the logo, and I did a quick coating of filler primer, like automotive primer, and then barbecue black, which has a ton of solvent in it. And the two of those together with a lot of heat harden this into a decently hard base coat, which works for starting the project. It's a great base coat to start from. I'll buff it down if anything didn't cure. But this is like, it's not fiberglass, but it's not Bakelite. I don't know. It looks like hard fiber. It might be fiberglass. I have no idea. When I was grinding it with a belt sander, it smelled like Bakelite or phenol plastic. Anyways, this is a solid thing for the side. And this, the trigger, there's a little spring here, which is cool. We'll leave that alone. But this is a cast item. See that? It's not steel. It didn't take perma blue or super blue or whatever I was using, but I wanted to look at that. There's a hole. Literally. So what size is the hole? Again, just one little factor in the project, and that's what this is all about. I could just blow this up to size, measure it, and then just drill exactly what the measurement is. But sometimes, especially if they adjusted this for length or height or we don't know, you know. So what I like to do, I take a general measurement that's probably the same. If I'm looking at these two, yeah, they did make the pointy part of the trigger a sharper angle. So the height is not a good one to go by. Interesting. So I would say one of the best common denominators, the distance from the bottom and the distance from the side. That might give me the same general ratio. And then I could work that out from there. Let's see here. Okay. So on this, I use my Meditoyos here. Millimeters. I worked metric. Okay. So generally, if I go from the beginning of the curve, it's 2 millimeters in. So on paper, let's write that in. Well, that's a, wow. Okay, and then from top down, we are looking at yeah. We're looking at 2.2, 2.3 millimeters. So 2.2. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so it's a little up from the bottom and a little close to the side, which is very interesting. That is very interesting. And generally, it lines up with kind of the center of this circle. So I'm going to use a pencil. Yeah. Generally, that's a great way to start this. So the general, like if I'm just eyeballing this, center of the frickin' circle is about there, right? If we were to make this into a down, a little higher than that. Let's go a little higher. It's right about there. And from down here, they wanted, it looks like, the side of the circle to line up with the thing. They changed this. So if I want mine to look similar, we're going to line that up with, yeah, we're going to line this corner up with the side of the circle. Yeah, let me make that line. Okay, like that. And let's see. The other side of it really seems to line up with the end of the straight part of the gun. I don't have it in the gun. That might not help me. If we look here, that is kind of a little bit, kind of like halfway from the gun. Again, I don't have it mounted in here, so let's look at the top of this. That is kind of one, it's kind of a third of the circle down. So I can eyeball that. Bang, bang. Yep. Now I have the top of the circle and the side and the center. Not bad, generally speaking. And yeah, so it does kind of end with a third down here as well. Kind of like that. And if I remember, we did these like 2 and 2. So let's double check all this. That was with this size, right? So let's do a general height. That would be about 19.7. Yeah. So that's 2 out of 19.7, give or take. Let's say 20, just to make it easy. And the real height of something like this, generally speaking, is about, it's about 25. The real one is about 25. So this generally is about 4. And about 3.8. So that makes sense. See that? They're a little bit bigger. And this is a little bit bigger. 20 to 25 from 2 to 4 makes a lot of sense. So generally speaking, this ratio thing is working. And that would be the distance from the side and the distance from the bottom. And I think the center of the circle down here is like a little bit in from the, it's about a third in from the side. So if we divide this by 3, it would be right about here. Maybe a little bit in further, right about there. There you have it. So that is probably the center. And let's generally that's the kind of circle we're looking for. Now, granted, I'm going to use this center, but to get the circle of this size, let's see what the size is probably. Generally 13.5 mil. Both directions. What's 14 look like? 14. I like 14. I like that a lot better. I like that a lot better. It's 14 mil. And this one is about 10. Just double checking because that's, oh no, 10 to 14. It's a little bit less. I just, you know, maybe 13 is better. Yeah, I guess 13 is better. No. Now 13 is better. Let's see. I'm just literally like moving this to see just ratio wise. It's hard to decide, but you know, I definitely think it's about 13, roughly. So, of a diameter, and oh, that would be this one. And this one is about 10. So again, it's a little bit larger, and it seems to kind of line up. So, it looks like we're going to do a 13 millimeter hole. Remembering where the camera is here. Weird, right? But again, that's kind of ratio. It's kind of partially artistic, partially using some math, and also kind of estimating, reducing things to like more easier to deal with sizes. And that's the thing, that's a decently large hole, but it doesn't reach all the way to the top or the side. And it's centered lower than it is high. So I want my project to generally have that look, to take up not half of the trigger, but like a third of it, which is cool. And it looks like they countersunk the edges of the hole a very little bit to make it soft on the hand and stuff like that. So I'm measuring to the outside of the countersink. So let's do 12.5 or 12-ish. Yeah, let's do 12 and then countersink it to 13. There we go. And I'm going to start with a pilot hole right where the center is. And then I'm going to work my way out. I'm not going to use a step drill bit. I only have success with those when it's thinner material. And every step has to be sharp. I once had one from Harbor Freight where one of the steps wasn't sharpened, and like, then it just burnishes the hole. And because this is detached from the gun, I can put a piece of wood underneath it and just drill straight down with all the force that I need. All right, I'll let you know how that goes. This has been fun, guesstimating ratios with some affordable Mitutoyos. All right. Well, wish me luck.